Welcome to another episode of Is This for Kids? I am Jonathan Bearded Blevins, married, husband, father of 3, 1 on the way. And I think that most media marketed towards children is a crime.
Oh, wow. Crime. Okay. And I am Katie, MrsRuvi. I am a mother of 5. And I think that you can redeem most of the media that's marketed out there for kids as long as you're willing to get in there and put in the work. And today we have a guest who has been so excited about the piece of media we are discussing. She has been tweeting about it. She has talked about it on her radio show. She has probably written fan letters to everybody involved. We have the lovely and talented Katie Prejean McGrady. Hey, Katie.
I've only Instagram tagged the stars 3 times and interviewed the director who requested the family Halloween photo. So, I wasn't like a stalker, just for the record.
Family Halloween photo.
Yeah, well, okay. So I interviewed Jon Chu, who's the director of Wicked. And at the conclusion of the interview, I mentioned that we were all in and that my daughter wanted to be Elphaba for Halloween. My husband was the Wizard of Oz. And so when we offered our youngest, Glinda, she said, no, I want to be a flying monkey. So I was prepared to be Glinda. And then my oldest said, no, Mom, people follow you, so you have to be the Yellow Brick Road. And he laughed and he said, please send me that photo. And so I did, by way of his media people and by way of Twitter and Instagram. And he hearted the message, so he saw it.
That's
nice.
Incredible. That's incredible. Cat's out of the bag. We're talking about Wicked. No, you're good. That's okay. A play that I got to go actually see, a musical, if you will, play. Is there a difference?
Well, plays are generally not musicals.
Okay, great.
Musicals are plays that
I
are
got to see it. I will say I was a sucker for it when I saw it. A lot of my theater nerd friends were like, oh, it's just okay. It's overrated, all this stuff. And I was like, I loved it. I love the songs. My wife loves it, so I wanted to go see it. I was very excited. But we're talking about Wicked today, ladies. Yeah. Ruvi, do you want to share a little bit about it?
Yeah, Wicked is basically how you tell the elder millennial theater nerds from the younger millennial theater nerds. If you are a Rent fan, you're an elder millennial. If you're a huge Wicked fan, you are a younger millennial. So that's the easy distinguishing. But the musical of Wicked won the Best Musical Tony Award in 2004. And it is the story of what happened before Dorothy arrived in Oz. How did the Wicked Witch become wicked? And so this whole story is the backstory between Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, who has become green through the misgivings of her mother and while she was pregnant with her, and her little sister, and how she grows up trying to protect her with this father who doesn't really have a great opinion of her. And she arrives at Shiz University, where she meets Galinda, the the Good Witch of the North, and they have sort of a contentious relationship before Elphaba goes off to see the wizard. So the movie that just came out is actually part 1, which is Act 1 of the musical. So you haven't got the whole story quite yet. Dorothy is not on the scene just yet.
Real quick, what is part 2 going to be? Do we know? Is it just going to be the Wizard of Oz, or are we going to get what actually happens from the end to this? Okay, so what happens is what's going to be next? Is it like the Wizard of Oz in a musical setting, or is it going to be we're going to actually learn? And I want some spoilers here. What's part 2? Is it brand new? Is there a book about it? Is there going to be some creative direction?
So it'll be revealed that essentially the Wizard of Oz, this is major spoiler, so I guess turn it off if you don't want to be spoiled. The Wizard of Oz is actually Elphaba's dad. So he had given the mother this little green elixir, which is in some way perhaps I don't think it tricked the mom, but it was, essentially a drug, an opiate of some sort. And that's what turned her green. And so then the Wizard of Oz, they've turned all of Oz against her because she's created these animals that they are now using to patrol other talking animals. So it's a complete propaganda campaign. There will be a transformation of a few characters that you've already met in the first half. So the little lion cub that she rescued from the classroom becomes the Cowardly Lion.
Yes, I knew it. I was right.
Fiyero, this was a complete little hint in the Life is Happier for the Brainless in Dancing Through Life, will become the Scarecrow. And Bach, who is called Bick, who is in love with Glinda, but is happy to flirt with Nessa Rose, will become, who's missing, the Tin Man. And they all three kind of coordinate, right? So the lion, she specifically says, like, don't be scared, right, when they're in the woods. Fiyero constantly kind of making these jokes about how, like, he's thoughtless, but now he's thinking because he's encountered Elphaba. And then Bach, who's in love with Glinda, and so his heart is kind of missing. So those men will kind of develop into these characters who eventually will encounter Dorothy. Now, John Chu has said, and been very close-lipped about, like, are they adding new songs into part 2? They're going to have to if they're going to get another feature-length 2-hour film out of part 2. And also, are we going to actually encounter Dorothy? And, like, rumor on the street is the girl who played Matilda in the Matilda movie musical, which is fantastic and, like, totally should be added to your list. She's playing Dorothy. There's, like, those rumors because she was at the premiere. Why would she have been at the premiere unless she's, like, in part 2, which has already been filmed? It's just in the process of being edited. And then, of course, there's the Wicked Witch dies. She's dead, right? Like, that's how Wicked actually begins. But, and this is, like, major spoiler territory, she doesn't die. She pretends to die, and Glinda and Fiyero, like, they actually, like, whisk her away, because the real hinge to this whole story is that the Wicked Witch is not wicked. Like, yes, by the time we see her in Wizard of Oz, the movie, and in the L. Frank Baum books, of which there's multiple books, she's kind of this evil character. But in the Wicked story, the Wicked Witch is only wicked because of the propaganda from Madame Morrible and the wizard, who is her father, who then, of course, feels incredibly guilty for what he's done. So there's the completion of the story. It will be interesting to see how complex they get in part 2, because part 1's, like, my 7-year-old totally got it. Like, she completely understood. Like, this is about bullying people. And it was like, yeah, that's what the movie's about. So part 2 gets a little more in the weeds. Will they make it PG-13? I doubt it, because they're going to want it to be a nice little box set, and they're going to do all sorts of, like, go see part 1, take a break, and then see part 2. So we'll see. That's what's coming.
I had no idea. I picked up on the lion. That's the only thing I picked up on.
Really?
That is so cool. I loved it.
Yeah.
You saw the musical.
You saw the
didn't you?
musical.
What do you mean I saw the music? What do you mean?
Didn't you say you saw
Yeah,
it?
a long time
You
ago.
saw it on. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and part 2 is a lot weaker, famously. Like, Defying Gravity, like, some people are like, that's where it should have ended. But, like, there is a whole other set to the story. Gregory Maguire's book, also, do not let your children read it. It is raunchy, and the movie and the musical do not recreate some of the scenes from the book. And, like, the book is, it's an odd exploration of the story. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the musical and the movie, like, redeem the more childlike nature of the tale.
Yeah, we absolutely cannot. We can't not mention, because you asked, is there a book? There is a book. This was based on a book. Gregory is the author. I can't think of his first name right now. But
Gregory Maguire, and it's it's a trilogy.
Yeah, it is not appropriate for children. It is it's not appropriate for children
it's
at all. In the same ways that we were opposed to, what was that? It begins with us, or it ends with us, that kind of thing. It's this very strange adult content that's being snuck into things that seem appropriate for children. It's not at all that. So please don't think that you can hand your 12-year-old the book and think that, a lot of times we hear parents are like, you can't watch the movie till you read the book. Don't do that here. That's not what you want to do. All right. So Katie, we usually like to look at content in terms of what parents might want to shield their kids from. What are some things like they absolutely don't want their kids to see that is in there? What kind of things do they want to shepherd their kids through, like some conversation starters that will come up from a piece of content? And then how can they use this media to share with their kids? So from a shield perspective, what is in there that you think a parent might be concerned about?
So there's an opening musical montage, obviously, where there's kind of like they go back in time to how did Elphaba come to be. Elphaba is the result of adultery. Her mother has an affair with a character that, obviously, if you were maybe listening to the spoilery section earlier, we eventually know who that will be. And so, like, my 7-year-old immediately clocked, like, wait a second, like, that's not she. And the way Rose framed it was she loved somebody that wasn't her husband, and they had a secret. And so, like, she didn't know the word adultery, even though we've talked about that from, like, the 10 Commandments perspective. So that was, like, one thing where I was like, oh, like, okay, pay attention to the fact that, like, she totally picked up on that. They don't show anything. It's rated PG, so, like, it's suggestive, like, they, like, fall down. And obviously we know what's going to happen. But, like, it's very PG. Like, there's nothing, like, you don't see anything. Maybe a little a little shirt action, but like nothing is taken off. You don't see any body parts. And then there's some dance moves, and Rose picked up on this too, where there's in Dancing Through Life specifically, which is the big Fiyero number in the library. It's clear that, like, okay, Fiero's the character who's going to corrupt everybody, and they're going to go off and have this wild night at the Ozdes Ballroom, which in the book is a very inappropriate gathering, and in the movie is just a bunch of college kids essentially, like, sneaking out for the night. Like, think, like, Harry Potter, they're trying to go to Hogsmeade after hours. Like, it's very innocently, it's like they're going to a dance. But there's some dance moves throughout the course where, like, Fiyero is glancing suggestively at men and women. It's like equal opportunity. We're going to be suggestive with our dance moves and our attractiveness, which on the one hand, okay, it's like Broadway. This is camp. This is dancing. Like, you're going to see that in any Broadway play where it's very much like everybody's dancing with everybody. But if you're really, like, closely paying attention, you might kind of pick up on a little bit of that. The other thing, like, that I would maybe shield my kids from, or at the very least, like, it would then become a shepherd conversation, is this idea of clearly they are trying to pick up on the themes of racism and prejudice and targeting people for being different. And there's a couple of characters that I noticed that they're very much playing up the, like, these are the bad guys, or these are the characters who are, like, specifically targeting Elphaba. And there's one line, and it's a throwaway, like, line where it's right after Glinda has seen Elphaba for the first time. She goes, "Oh, you're green." And then, like, as everybody's kind of, like, walking away and Elphaba's, like, trying to kind of figure out, like, where she's supposed to go, you hear it's Bowen Yang's character say, "I don't see color." And, like, he's clearly, it's like an ad-libbed line. I've gone and listened to some podcasts with him talking about it after the fact. It's clearly like he said like 6 or 7 different things, and that's the one that they chose in the final cut. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, and you laugh at it, and it's funny. But I did clock that, like, maybe that's going to come up in conversation later, because there have been many times in our household where we talk about the differences in people's skin tone or skin color, because my daughter is, like, always trying to color things accurately when she's, like, coloring in her coloring book. And she'll ask me, like, "Oh, is their skin brown? Is their skin tan? Is their skin peach?" And so, like, I noticed, like, she clocked that line. And so it's just, like, be aware. It's kind of in, like, the first third of the movie. Everything else, for the most part, I was not, it's PG. Like, I was so happy it was PG. Because I didn't have to worry about sex. I didn't have to worry about language. There's, like, no language at all, which is welcome. Like, I don't even think they say the word "shut up." Like,
no, which no language
is
at all.
a forbidden phrase in our family. So, like, it was great in that regard. But those 3 things I kind of clocked.
Yeah, there's no sex, no drugs, no violence, no any of the things that we usually, no explosions, nothing scary, no dead bodies, nothing like that. So from a shield perspective, I think she hit everything. Was there anything?
100%.
We should probably mention the monkeys, though. That is one thing. Like, I would not take...
a little...
5 or younger, there's a couple of, I completely forgot about this. So when they go see the wizard, she transforms the monkeys, obviously, the flying monkeys, which are traumatizing from the 85-year-old Wizard of Oz, are still traumatizing today. And they are there's, like, a couple of scenes where, like, monkeys are hitting windows and, like, crushing their fists through the windows and, like, trying to grab at Elphaba, trying to grab at Glinda. That was a little scary. And there is that one scene with the balloon that's like a fireball. We went with just Rose. We did not bring our 4-year-old. Sitting a few seats away from us was a friend of mine. She's got 3 kids who are 7, 5, and I think 4. And the 4-year-old cried. Like, the 4-year-old, they took her out because she was very startled by the intensity of the monkeys. They kind of turned Defying Gravity into an action sequence. And so I think 7 and up can handle that. If you've got a very sensitive kid, just kind of be aware that is a little scary.
Yeah, I did take my 4-year-old, and she was not affected by it at all. She thought it was fine.
Oh, good.
So,
okay, good.
Yeah, I think it depends on, like, how much your kid has had exposure to tense scenes.
Yeah.
It's definitely tense.
My 9-year-old would be horrified.
Yeah.
But he would watch
if you
it.
Had
he would for sure
childhood
watch
trauma from The Wizard of Oz, you're going to be terrified.
Yeah,
100%.
but, like, you mentioned exactly what I would say for the shepherd conversations, that there is a good conversation to be had here about judging people based on their character versus how they look. And we have had a lot of conversations after the fact, because I have a child who looks different than other children, and she's very much like making that connection. She's 4, but she's like, oh, they were being mean to her because her skin is different. Her daddy doesn't like her because her skin is different. Do people not like you because you're different? Like, she's clearly making this connection. It hasn't come full circle for her yet, but that's a conversation to be had, that like how people treat you based on your looks is something that we're going to have to address with our kids, and how we want them to come out there and present to the world.
There was
Good
also
stuff,
a
Ruvi.
point
Go ahead.
where Rose mentioned, I interviewed her live on my radio show about it, and she went, well, everybody's mean to Glinda, but then they're mean to Elphaba. Everybody's mean to Elphaba, but then they're nice to Elphaba when Glinda starts to be nice to Elphaba. Mm-hmm. And I said, but actually, Elphaba was nice to Glinda first. Because when Nessa Rose goes to Elphaba and says, Glinda, like, set up this date for me, Elphaba then goes to Madame Morrible and asks for Glinda to be included in her class, which she knows is what Glinda wants most of all. Mm-hmm. So Elphaba actually takes the first step in being kind to the bully, essentially. And that you can see, and Ariana Grande plays it so perfectly. Like, you can see the shift in the character when she realizes she actually did not earn the kindness of Elphaba, because she did it very selfishly to like set up the date between Nessa Rose and Bach. And now Elphaba is offering kindness. And so Glinda, I don't think it's a guilt thing. I don't think the movie's playing it as like Glinda's guilted into being kind to Elphaba. I think she realizes, I judged this woman wrongly, and I should have not. So there's a very beautiful, it's my favorite scene in the whole movie. I was crying like a baby. There's like a conversion moment where like Glinda steps out of her bubble and enters into Elphaba's woundedness and being herself. And all of a sudden there's a shift in the entire kind of culture of how do we treat this woman. And like, so Rose clocked, and it was a great conversation. We were building our Wicked Lego sets last night about how when you're kind to people, other people see that kindness, and how kindness multiplies in some ways, which then the flip side of it is cruelty can multiply when they turn everybody against Elphaba, and it's get her and this wicked witch, and it's an immediate change in the narrative. And so there's so many layers of how we treat others and how that impacts the world around us, that really can be a very fruitful discussion, even with little ones.
Yeah.
100%. I'm big on leadership and talking to my kids about being leaders in every aspect of their life. And there's a great conversation in this movie to be had about that you don't have to have that conversion moment. In fact, you can be the leader right away and enter into that woundedness. Mm-hmm. That scene was unbelievable. I was personally blown away by the movie. Like, I was expecting it to be good and fun. And like, I knew the music was going to be awesome. Everyone killed it. Every single actor. I mean, Ariana Grande was hilarious.
So good.
Cynthia, the voices, it was unreal, unbelievable. I loved it.
Yeah, it didn't occur to me that Ariana Grande had that start, because like I'm a huge Kristen Chenoweth fan, so I was like, there's no shot you can. But she played it so perfectly, and she had that solid opera voice that you don't. I didn't expect that to come out of her. And so from a Cher perspective, there's a lot of memes going on around the Wicked thing. And my favorite one right now has Adele Gazim, not her real name, Indina Menzel, standing next to Cynthia Erivo and Kristen Chenoweth and Ariana Grande. And the thing underneath, like, she looks like a monster. She looks so much bigger than the other 3 women. And it says, you would never guess by looking at this that Indina Menzel is 5'4". Like, and she is. It's so wild. She's the same height as me. She looks huge next to these women.
Those little tiny women. Yeah, Cynthia Erivo is like not tall at all.
No, I think she's 5
which is why
foot.
she's always in those heels, and then did her own stunts, which is just wild to think about. I think there's also a Cher conversation to be had about talent in a lot of ways. Like, Rose was really impressed when I showed her the picture of Ariana Grande with Kristen Chenoweth and her grandma at the original Broadway production. And like, when Ariana was a kid, she fell in love with this piece of art. And like it was always her dream to play this character. And like, yeah, she's this pop star, and like she dated Pete Davidson. Like there's all like sorts of crazy like twists, and she's a Nickelodeon star, like Hairspray Live. Like she's done all this stuff. But if you actually go listen to some of her interviews, many of them which are appropriate. Rose and I watched an interview with Cynthia and Ariana. Of course, they cried, but they were also talking about like what the art meant to them. Rose, my 7-year-old's, she's a big theater kid. Like it was a great moment for us to like talk about investing in your gifts and like talent and like pursuing the thing that you love. And like these theater kids, they made it. That's not what our goal should be. Our goal shouldn't be to just be in some movie someday, but like they worked hard, they honed their skills, they honed their craft, and now they're getting to share that with the world. And my theater kid loved that. And I think, I mean, whatever it might be, like really pointing to your children, like authentic talent. I also love, side note, John Chu, 5 kids. They had their 5th kid like a few weeks ago, like a newborn in the house, while they're doing like all this press tour stuff. So John, my first question to him when I had him on SiriusXM was, how are you balancing family and this big thing that you've been doing for years? They've had 2 kids in the course of making this movie. And he said, well, there is no balancing it. Family always comes first. First thing he said in the interview. Wow. Like, I love that. Like that makes me love this property even more. That his family was very much a part of the creation of this. Like he moved his family to England so that he could go home every night in the course of them creating this. But then also that like he's missed out on some of the premieres. He hasn't done all the press junket stuff because he's home with his wife and his children. And I love that. I think that is something that we should be highlighting in talking about the movie.
And let's just give a quick shout out to Mrs. Chu, who's clearly killing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clearly.
Right? 5 kids, right?
Clearly, absolutely destroying it. Well, this has been just a really great conversation. I love I mean, obviously, we all walked away from it thinking that it was fantastic. What age would you say it's appropriate for? If you were going to give a cutoff, what age would you say totally safe?
I'd say like second grade, like a mature first grader, second grader. It's PG. So like think about the PG movies in your life. Think about the Disney PG movies in the 90s. This is no worse than that. And like even like little tiny suggestive things are not, they've seen stuff like that before. So I would say 6, 7, and then, to 99. Like truly.
Yeah. Yep. I'm going to go 7. I'm going to go 7, 8, 7, 8 Ruvi. And like Mike, I'm going to use this. I'm going to share, like this will be my kids' first musical that they watch, my boys, and I'm sure they're going to love it. And I'm pumped because like I grew up not loving musicals and not being into it. I was just like sports and whatever Disney movie my parents took us to, which we, in a weird way, are kind of like musicals. There was a lot more singing in there, but I loved it, and I think my boys will. So I'm gonna go 7 or 8, but that's mostly due to the interest level. Just I don't like my oldest at 5 or 6 would not have wanted to watch it for sure. But now he's old enough, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I would say interest level only would be the thing that I would put it at 6. I think it's appropriate for all ages. Anybody under 6 would miss anything unless they're easily scared, like we talked about the monkey scenes, But my 4-year-old was fine. So if you don't have an easily scared child and they can be kept entertained by non-animated movies, I would say all ages. But for interest level, 6 is probably your starting point. There you go.
There you go.
Well, this was just absolutely wonderful. Hey, if people wanted to find you somewhere, Katie McGrady, where would they find you?
So Katie P. McGrady on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, all those places. I'm mainly on Instagram and Twitter. And then my live radio show is on SiriusXM every afternoon from 2 to 4 Eastern time on channel 129. So we're like smack dab between EWTN and Joel Osteen, and we're just a few ticks away from the Disney Channel. And it's actually, I don't know when this is going to air, but our Listen Free event is going on now. So SiriusXM is turned on in your car until December the 2nd, completely for free. So you can listen to us over there.
Yeah,
cool.
Definitely check out the Jimmy Fallon radio Christmas thing.
Oh, yeah, it's a fun. When the Christmas stations go live, I'm like, nobody listen to me anymore. Just go listen to all the Christmas music.
Absolutely. Hey, if they wanted to find more content about movies and music and video games and various different media, Jon, where would they find us?
Isthisforkids.com is the hub where you can find everything that we are doing. We're on YouTube, anywhere podcasts are available. Very active on Instagram with reels and posts. Isthisforkids.com.
Absolutely. Hey, there is just so much media out there for us to navigate as parents.
I'm Jonathan Beard of Blevins.
I'm Katie, MrsRuvi. Let us help you decide.
Is this for kids?